Hello, valued listener, and welcome to the second special episode of the Interior North podcast, where we will be taking a look at Demonic Consultation and the decks and win conditions that it defines. I am your host for this episode, Reed, aka Sickrobot, and today I'm joined by three fantastic people who will be helping me take a deep dive into the topic at hand. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome officially to Sugandaraja.
Hey.
Wedge of Not the Mana Source of the CDH Discord and Reddit.
Howdy.
And Redshift.
Good morning.
Or evening.
So, wherever you may be. As I mentioned before, today we're going to be doing a deep dive on the card Demonic Consultation, as well as its pair, Tainted Pact and Laboratory Maniac and all that good stuff. And more specifically, the decks and strategies that it enables, as well as covering some of the questions for people to put in over the last couple months or so. So now that we've gotten that intro done with, how are you guys? Doing well?
I'm doing good. It's bright and early here in California.
Sunny California.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's gray and early here in Vancouver.
It's just ticked up to 2 a.m. in Melbourne. I'm chilling.
Boy.
But otherwise, I'm good. Yeah.
We have a wide span of time zones on this cast right now, so we're trying to make this work. Was not the easiest thing, but we got there. We're all in a voice call together.
We're doing it live.
So, to get started, because I think we have a lot of ground to cover, and we should probably get into it. We are going to start off with the history of the Consult archetype in CDH. How did we get to the deck? How did the deck come about to where it is now? You know, like what decks came before it, all that good stuff. So I know, Wedge, you had some pretty specific stuff on this.
So, okay. So, obviously just the consultation cards, Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pact, those kind of cards. Like the first kind of uses we saw for them in competitive EDH were obviously in the food chain decks, in Prosh and Tazri, and they were used frequently as essentially a 2-for-1 tutor, where you can play it to get your Castrum Exile creature plus food chain in Tazri's case. But then the first time I think I saw the specific Labman plus Consult, I think it was during the 2016 tournament where Shaper played it as a backup plan. Correct me if I'm wrong, as a thing of hey, people are going to want to try and get rid of my food chain or whatever, and played as a backup plan. And then it just ended up just being fantastic as an alt win con, just kind of stuck. And then
at that time there was
the
a lot
beginning
of people going, all Praetor's Grasp your food chain, and that was kind of something that Shaper was getting memed on a lot. So
it was a very different time.
That in secret at first for those games there, because he didn't want to let people know that he's running on Labman. He wanted people to think that he was all in on food chain, so people would waste their turn trying to Praetor's Grasp that.
I think that turned into really effective tech, right? Just because, the single card, right?
Mm-hmm. It was just almost essentially free to run, with only one slot being Labman.
Yeah, because in that deck you wanted the Exile tutors anyway. You want to get rid of the Prosh effects when you're looking for food chain. The ideal Tazri turn is hit a Castrum Exile dude and grab food chain with an Exile tutor and then combo off.
So aside from food chain, because we all know how well food chain uses that card, and they're sort of disgusting there. I know it before we got to a dedicated consultation deck or set of decks. There were definitely some decks that were using consultation and more commonly Tainted Pact before that point. And there are also some other decks that sort of had similar shells to what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, the Doomsday, the Jaleva Doomsdays or Doomsday kind of decks of old, where they kind of follow a similar kind of shell, where with Constellation, obviously you want Constellation plus Labman plus Cantrip. In Doomsday, it's you have Doomsday plus Cantrip, and then a certain amount of mana to kind of do essentially the same thing, where you're exiling your entire deck except say for 5 cards, and then just plow through into a Labman win.
Yeah, so really the same style of deck, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And
I was just going to say also, I recall a few years ago when Lil Brother was more actively brewing in Bug Reanimator, especially like Dread Return, All Out Self Mill, like what was it called? Angels and Demons for Breakfast by Dan Brownweaver.
Oh God, right.
And like Sidisi, like I saw it pop up in some of the older like Hulk and Reanimator decks that were using like Dread Return for stuff like Labman, obviously, Necroticus, not so much, but yeah, in a few of those decks a few years ago. Tainted Pact particularly because you're on the singleton mana base for Hermit Druid.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was SBT, right? Sidisi Brood Tyrant, I believe.
Yeah.
Which was, I think a lot of that came from also the layering of, they were already on Dread Return stuff, like with Food Chain and Cast from Exile creatures anyway.
I know it's currently in Siggy's like prime Breakfast Hulk list, but it would have floated in and out at different stages over the last few years.
Yeah. And then I think Sug had experience with really where the Kess console shelf specifically comes from, at least I believe.
Oh yeah, the modern one kind of came as an adaptation between me and IMOC when we were originally working on Kess Twin. See, Kess Twin doesn't have to have like the Gush Tide mana base that a lot of the Zur and Jaleva lists were running at the time, where you have like a lot of islands and it's heavily geared towards that. But like Kess Twin was already running Demonic Consultation because like with that deck you just need an A+B combo. So you go ahead and have one, just exile your whole deck to get the other if you need to, and you can still get there. But one of the things at that time was there's a lot of specific activated ability hate in the meta both me and IMOC were playing in. And I put in Laboratory Maniac because I just noticed we were running the XL tutors, and I saw that Shaper had done that with his Food Chain deck and thought, okay, well, I'll add in Labman just as like a backup win con. And what I noticed was that the backup win con was like way better and more consistent than the twin win con. And so I was like, okay, let's just cut all the fat stuff and just add Adnaz and stuff, and that's kind of when it started becoming its own deck.
Yeah, I remember when we were playing that in the old like team leagues, and it's like more than like 60% of your wins were like, oh, like they just happen to be console over twin.
And I think it really the reason why we're seeing Grixis Twin now, as opposed to maybe it like could have been a thing in the past but wasn't, is maybe because of the difference between how Kess synergizes with the card and how like Jaleva doesn't really synergize with the card, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what I would be talking about for any uninformed viewers, as I'm sure the rest of the guys in these podcasts know, but just to cater to the layman a bit here, because Kess lets you cast a card from the graveyard, you can recast a consultation that you've already cast, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So because, just the kind of like the standalone like consultation, Labman, cantrip, that's like a 3-card combo, which isn't too hot. But with Kess being in play, that kind of makes that combo a 2-card combo because you can just have a cantrip and Demonic Consultation in hand and just be like, all right, I'm going to go off. Because you can go consult, grab the Labman, consult again, play your cantrip, and then have fun.
Cool.
Yep.
So I think
don't
even
that's need the cantrip anymore. Thank the Jace.
Yep. We'll get to that.
That's a good one.
Made it way more streamlined.
Base Jace.
So that's just about. I think that's a pretty comprehensive history of the archetype and the deck in general.
Yeah.
So I think next we wanted to get to just sort of like the general from going from the history of the deck to the current state of the deck, right? Current stats in the meta. I guess we can also go over recent additions, how it's changed recently, all that good stuff. So yeah, I think first we were gonna do sort of just commanders that can theoretically helm the deck, right?
Yeah.
So, like, obviously we have Kess, but there's a wide cast of other commanders that can actually be at the helm of the deck, right?
Yes, and there have been several different, like, decks that have like, come out over the last, like, year or so that are just like, oh, the console strategy is pretty sweet. Let's see if we can jam it in there. You know, like, obviously, so there's Kess, as you said, but there's also Sug's Brailus, which is really, really, really fucking cool.
And also has one of the best names in all of CDH. I just want to throw that out there.
Shout outs to Shaper Taint.
Yeah, I've had a lot of questions about that name.
There's also, you know, obviously we've also had some, you know, strategies where they delve in with Zur. There's obviously the classic Thrasios and Tymna where they've been using that as well. Tymna and Crown has been a really commonly used consult deck.
Well, because that deck for a long time didn't really have a real win condition, right? Because it's
100%
fairly hard to find a win condition that, like, in that deck when it doesn't have an infinite mana outlet.
Yep, and now it has a very consistent one. Now that, especially with a couple of printings of you know, important cards in the last couple sets, namely like Base Jace and Smothering Tithe have made that deck pretty sweet.
Oh my god, Smothering Tithe.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so you want to talk a little bit about Brea, 'cause it's kind of a bit of an outlier between the others, because, you know, most all these other decks are console plus Tainted Pact with Labman or Jace stuff. Like, you know, mind talking a little bit about how Brea's outlier on that?
Well, the big thing about Brea is that, like, as an infinite mana outlet, it's not drawing its deck. Like, a lot of the infinite mana outlets are deck looping decks. They're about sink into infinite mana and then you loop X cards. Brea doesn't really need that. It's just an X damage. So for pinging, you sacrifice Brea over and over again to hit your opponents in the face. So with that, you can be a little bit more aggressive with the XL tutors. So say you have the Auriok Salvagers. It doesn't matter if you exile your whole deck to go grab that LED. Land's Eye Diamond, just for people who are not familiar.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and do that aggressively there. Now, it's not primarily like a Labman type deck. In fact, right now I even cut Labman. I'm only running Jace, the new Labman
Sacrilege.
Jace. And otherwise, it's going to be, yes, Isochron's Scepter, Dramatic Reversal, and Auriok Salvagers, Lion's Eye Diamond. Those are your main combos when you're going in for the win.
Fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, no, that deck is sweet. I really appreciate the way that it leverages those you know, forbidden tutors like so well.
Yeah, just having played against it personally, playing against Sug a lot in the past, that deck is really interesting in the way that it has it tends toward being a very aggressive strategy, at least from what I can see, but also has this win condition that is effectively, you just can't deal with it with stacks in any way or onboard hate. Like, you just have to have the stack interaction to deal with consult a lot of the time, right?
Yeah, a big part of making it that way was I wanted to shore up some of the weaknesses of traditional Brea lists, because, like, Brea gets hit hard by a lot of stacks effects. So when you have that nice backup, you don't have to worry about, like, oh, I'm just out of the game because there's, like, a Null Rod in play or something.
Yeah, which really makes sense, because, at least from my opinion, I think I've had a lot of issue with past Brea lists just because of basically losing to everything, right?
Yeah.
And then I believe there's one more that we wanted to talk about, or get through at least, which is Zur, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the consult Zur.
Yeah, Zur is kind of a tricky one, as there's never sort of been really an agreed upon Zur consult list. I mean, the combo there is the same as the Kess, but you lack the graveyard recursion with Kess, so it's always going to be either an A plus B or an A plus B plus C combo if you're using Labman. There are, like, a few lists that are also like the Tainted Shimmer, because, like, Shimmer, you're comboing off on your end step, so having the Exile Tutors being instant speed is really sweet for that deck. So a lot of the Shimmer Mirror lists have moved away from being like the Gush Tide mana base into being more like Singleton mana base and focusing on the XL tutors in your end step.
Interesting.
So that was the version I played more of than like your sort of straight Zoran Consultation, I think it was called, which seemed to lean a bit more into like mid-range value, and like, but either way, that deck, any iteration of Zora really runs a boatload of interaction. But running the Tainted Shimmer is great. You have these consultation lines, which like Zora's hit by the artifact stacks as well, your Null Rods and Stony Silences and now like Collection Oof and stuff. But the thing that's awkward about trying to combine the Tainted consultation lines with the end step Shimmer, like the Tainted tutors go really well with Adnors. If you hit like one of the pieces along the way, they can help make your Adnors really strong. But if you pick up like a Labman off a Necro for 30 in end step, it's really awkward. Like the instant speed Forbidden Tutors is still really nice in that situation for like putting the other things together you need to storm off. But it just stings when you pick up the Labman. And it's like, I've seen people honestly try to jam like Flash. There's a one white speed instant that cantrips that lets you play a creature. Which would be
Scout's Warning.
Yeah, that's pretty spicy. I never leaned into it myself. I just kind of accepted that was like not a great layering aspect, but it still plays. It's a strong deck.
Yeah,
which is sort of really like an interesting case study, and also this sort of pairs with Brea, but how Consult tends to be, just because of its slot efficiency and just like efficiency in general, it tends to layer very nicely with a lot of other combos, right?
It does. And like another thing to add on to it, it's also just like super resilient to just stacks effects in general. Like outside of, stuff like you can't draw cards during somebody's turn or something like that. Like that's really all that kind of stops those strategies from going off.
Yeah, which is really, I think, part of its niche in the meta right now, right? It's effectively, it's very difficult to play stacks against a Consult deck, right?
Yeah.
Because you can attack their mana production, and you can attack, maybe they're on casters there, and you can play a Null Rod, but that doesn't actually stop you from winning, right?
No.
Right. It's like you're perfectly fine, just like, all right, well, if I just have to keep doing like land go, and I have enough lands to just like, slam my combo down, and I'm like, all right. I think like one of the biggest things that have like really kind of pushed Consult to like kind of like the forefront, it's very well known now, is the printing of Jace Wield of Mysteries. I think that's kind of like the biggest thing that's really made like all these other decks kind of like want to play it now too, like the Tymnas and Thrasioses and the Tymnas and Crowns.
Well, yeah,
because now you just
like a big thing is that before, like as good as the old Landman combo is, it's still like a 3-card combo. Sure, you get a lot of redundancy with the cantrips, but like it's still a 3-card combo. Now it's a 2-card combo, which is like good in CDH
without the command, without even having a commander in play too, and like that's just like now it's literally just one BUUU to win the game, like in any deck that can run Consultation and Jace.
Yeah, I think previously you were really looking more for commanders and strategies that allowed you to get like something extra out of them, like Kess being able to use it twice to put the whole thing together, or the food chain decks that exile the creatures with them along the way, or Brea just not giving a crap about what you hit because you're just trying to put together infinite mana and you win with Brea herself. But now that you've got Jace, like, and I mean, Tymna and Thrasios was still a pretty good spot for creature Labman effect, because both Tymna and Thrasios can get you the draw and like a million other ways in Sans Red. But in Tymna Chrome in particular, like, that's just so nice. And Zur too, like you don't even need to actually have anything specific really, besides the fact that you were otherwise looking to draw a chunk of cards and you're in a blue-black something.
Yeah, it's so easy just to fit in those general UB shells.
Yeah.
So I think we got through most of the commanders that we specifically wanted to talk about with that, right? And I think I just wanted to, at least I wanted to touch on this because I think it's pretty. I think it's a pretty widely asked about for a lot of decks, and it doesn't necessarily get covered that much. Which is just how easy is it to just pick up a console deck and play with it, right? Because there are a lot of decks out there. Specific, like if you look at like food chain decks, they're like, because of the food chain angle, they're difficult to play. A lot of people get really intimidated when they pick up a storm deck because it's just a lot of stuff to think about, right? So just like how easy would you guys say it is to just get into either the format with a console deck or already being in the format but not having played the archetype before, just picking up a console deck and playing it?
So I'm like, please, I definitely want to hear what Sugs and Red's opinion on this is, but I kind of feel like it's one of the more, I feel like it's a bit difficult to kind of get into. Like I probably wouldn't recommend console as like a very, very first like CDH deck. Cause I kind of feel that especially you're playing like Kess in particular. I kind of feel like non-green strategies are kind of difficult because you have to make a lot more important mulligan decisions. I feel like that's a really big part because you don't have the access of mana dorks. And then also you have to kind of like read the table because Kess can be either a very kind of quick deck, depending if you get all the gas that you need, or you could play grindy, by doing like land signets and all that kind of stuff and playing value. And then on top of that, just kind of like assembling the consultation, and getting the right amount of mana and knowing how to use how to leverage your ad nauseams and your necropotences. I feel is kind of it is a big skill intensive. I mean, I mess up my combos all the time, or like I'll ad nause at the worst time and be like, oh well, hey, I'm dead. And so I kind of feel that it's not the easiest, but I mean, with Jace now being in the play, like the combo gets so much easier. So
it's a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier to map out your turns, right? When you don't have to necessarily like save a cantrip.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I have to like constantly play console like all the time in order to like get good with it. Because if I leave it, if I go over to another deck and I try to play something else, I'm like, and I come back to it, I'm like, oh wow, I'm trash at this.
Yeah, I think a lot of the difficulty is just from like the blue-black shell cards. Like, I mean, you're winning through consult, but if all you ever do is playing the deck is just like try to assemble that, and like that's often not the way you're actually getting there. It's usually like you're getting there through like ad nause or thief wheel, like
right.
Yeah, like theoretically you're always getting there through Labman consult, but like how you approach that is pretty rarely just like I cast Labman or Jason consult. Like sometimes you get that, but often you're wanting like a big card draw. Or
Yep.
Yeah, that kind of thing there.
I'd agree. Yeah, I'd agree that it's not easy. Like you mentioned, the deck can go quick, and it can. I think I have had like a turn 2 once ever, and it was like a completely all-in chain of vapor, sacking both my 2 lands to recast Cheerios to get there, and like it was glorious. But it'll never happen again. There are just there are faster decks, which means that you got to really like you need to lay some kind of value engine, and you need to land mana rocks, as Wedge mentioned. We can't rely on dorks, which then just turn into Phyrexian arenas if you're on Timna. So like you need to have a game plan, which means you do need to see a few things, and that game plan isn't like, oh sweet, assemble Lab Jace plus Tainted Shooter as quickly as possible. Like that's not the game plan. That's like what has to happen at the end. You're almost certainly going to have to disrupt somebody else, and like if you get sucked into interacting too early, you're just going to leave the gates down for the person holding up their flash. So it's not easy, but it does, because the win con is so resilient. Like you can afford to just cop a null rod on the table, even if it hits you a bit hard, to hold up that like one piece of interaction. Like it hasn't stopped you winning, it slowed it down, and like it takes a lot of patience, and sometimes you do need to like really race for it, but tricky.
So would you guys say, because sort of me listening to this is a question that I have, is So even though, so pretty much any CDH deck will require a fairly high level of technical play just to be able to consistently not make just technical play mistakes. But would you guys say that Consult generally as an archetype, as a standalone archetype, is a lot heavier on game sense rather than technical play? It rewards you knowing pods and compositions and having like generally good decision making rather than technical mechanical play, or would you say it's still the other way around?
Simple. Like, you don't need to memorize, you know, a 4-page document like you do if you want to play Raza Hulk. Like, you don't. It's like, oh wait, how do I do my free pivot again? Oh, damn! Better look up that Astral Codex Google Doc from 2 years ago. It's like, you do the win con is simple. It's about like wading through the game in between, and like that, I don't think there's really a shortcut through like the experience required to get good at that.
I kind of think that it's a mix of both. Like, you need to have a good knowledge of technical sense and like board sense, because like at the end of the day, like Consult is like, or at least Kess Consult and just the non-green ones, they're ad nauseam necropotence notion wheel decks. You know, like that's really their plan A's. You know, it's not to like get that 2-card assembly. It's usually I'm going to resolve an ad nauseam or necropotence to draw my combo, or play a notion wheel to do that, or whatever. And so there's a lot of like little small technical things on playing ad nauseum, and like knowing when to resolve it, and then also like how to kind of like play your mana, using, doing like Red said earlier, like, oh, I'm going to be using like Chain of Vapor to bounce my own lands to recast my own rocks to get enough mana to play Jace plus Demonic Consultation, or knowing how deep to go on your Necro Potence based on the board state. It's like, all right, am I gonna feasibly be able to win next turn if I go super deep on my Necro, or are all the shields going to be up and I need to just kind of start necroing for like 4 or 5 cards at a time or something? And then obviously, there's the whole reading the board. It's like, do I want to, as Red was saying earlier, do I want to set up and, play my rocks and have interaction up, based on the board state because there's like, 2 Flash Hulk players at the table, or do I want to, try and be like, I'm going to go, Dark Ritual into Notion Thief end of turn, then untap and play a wheel. It's like there's a lot of different kind of it's kind of just UBX decks in general, where you just have there's a lot of lines. There's too many decisions. There's a lot of decision trees you can make, and I'm kind of think that it's more of a technical thing that you need to know more than a board sense, or maybe it's like more like kind of like a fair balance of both for the
gotcha
deck.
Oh, it's probably worth mentioning that if you try to play Tainted Shimizu, then you're going to need to be able to do manual storm lines as well.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like, if this is actually sounding like fun to you and not putting you off like it probably should, then maybe Tainted Shimizu is for you.
Yeah, you don't have as many
good at the game
stormy lines in Kess, but you do occasionally have some, because you're, compared to like traditional storm lists, you're less able to output quite as much mana post like a Big Naz or a Thief Wheel. Like, you don't quite have as much mana production ability. So you do occasionally have like lines where you're playing a bit like a storm deck after a Big Naz, trying to figure out how to squeak out that mana to like Lava-Land mana to draw, or that kind of thing. But yeah, generally you're using manual storm lines less.
Yep.
Definitely makes sense. So just one little small thing before we move on from specifically this. So say if somebody wanted to get into Consult, but you think they might have to pick up some more skills in CDH in general, and maybe they should probably refine their technical play and gain a bit more game sense before they get into the deck. What other similar types of decks, or maybe not so similar, would you guys suggest them play instead to work up to that point?
My recommendation is probably Grixis Twin. It's it's not as popular as it used to be, but I think it's a very simple kind of combo. and allows you to kind of just play around with blue black X decks in general, and just kind of get a feel for it. But that's like, I mean, it's an older deck though, so I'm not sure if that's what everyone else would think. What do you guys suggest?
My advice would just be hop right in. It's okay to be bad for a while if you like to play the deck, because like it's a good deck, it's a strong deck, and yeah, learning curve might be steep at the start, but once you get a better feel for the format, you'll start to know like when it's safe to go off and what feels okay as you're entering in. Like it's often a matter of reading the table.
I think maybe even Consultation, Scepter, Thrasios could be a bit more forgiving. You've got the dogs. You can like more aggressively like just put together a simple to understand infinite mana combo, and it's gonna go wrong a lot because you're trying to like jam it together too quickly in the early days. But you'll be able to cast the Timner and maybe even get a second attempt in the same game in that deck. So I don't know, but it's definitely not like a cheaper way to go into it. Like either way, I would recommend proxying up to start out with. Yeah.
Yeah. I would like to change my opinion to both of theirs. It sounds way better than mine.
No, Wedge, you're good. Somebody had to mention Grixis twin. It had to happen sometime.
There you go.
All right. So unless you guys have any more comments, which feel free, but I think we've covered a lot of, so the current state of the deck overall.
Yeah.
How it works, all that good stuff. So just wanted to move on to just touching on hybrid consult decks. So decks that use the Demonic Consultation package or the Tainted Pact package, but don't necessarily are not necessarily all in on those win cons to win the game. That also have other access to win cons, but want to use the same packages, and just go through and just check them out. Maybe not have full discussions on them, but just make it known.
Right.
And I know this is fairly relevant right now just because of the recent Paradox Engine ban. Rest in peace.
Yes.
Yeah, PST is now CST.
Yeah, there are a lot of decks that have been switching over to a console package in lieu of the Paradox Engine package, right?
Yeah, there's also some decks that have also switched over to a binder package because they no longer exist.
Rest in peace.
I think it's probably fair to say that Paradox Scepter Thrasios was kind of leaning this way anyway. Like in Shaper's last update with the last set on Reddit for all of his paper decks, he updated PST, his list, and posted a link to his Consultation Scepter Thrasios list then, and a few days later, or maybe a few weeks later, we've had the ban. This idea was gaining traction, and now it's just been given a bit of a nudge in that shell in particular.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
And then, as we mentioned before, Food Chain.
It's even better now, right? Because your outlet with the first sliver is just the Labman effect. So
you just
if you didn't think it could possibly get any better than getting your one card combo with your commander and exiling this other sort of incidental thing along the way, the actual layer that you get is now the same outlet because you don't have to run any actual things to find off Niv or Tazri. So good.
So here's the question: is everything just eventually going to converge toward console? Just every deck's going to end up playing. If you have blue and black, you just jam console.
I mean, it depends on the mana base, but I mean, with the way mana bases are so free to build, even to make it into a singleton, it's like Tainted Pact as a card is pretty sweet. And even Najeela's running it now. They run Jace. They run Jace as a backup win because they're already leveraging the Forbidden Tutors.
Yeah, so maybe in the near future, maybe post Flashban, we'll just every deck will be a console deck.
I mean,
there's no getting away from it.
Noting how slept on the XL tutors were for the longest time. They've been around since the beginning. These are old cards, but they just weren't played or used very often until the past couple of years.
Of note as well, Demonic Consultation is a banned card and or restricted card in every format that it could be legal in as well.
Yep.
So it's not exactly an unknown piece of tech.
Mm-hmm. It's so strong.
Yeah, it's just there's a there's a lot, and I think people finally just caught on. It's like, yeah, this is a good card. So I know also there are a couple of other there are a few other decks that are running console, layered with some other stuff, and we won't go into this a super large amount because I know there are two people in this voice call that could dominate on the discussion and keep it going forever. But we'll touch on them quickly. So I know there are a lot of, surprisingly enough, Hulk decks that have been appropriating Tainted Pact and Consult for their own use recently. Which is, I mean, sort of surprising considering, the general trend of Hulk has a lot of pieces you don't want to lose, and why would you ever run Forbidden Tutors with those? But what are you guys' opinions on those? Because are those
on board with this.
Oh yeah, I think it's great. Like as somebody who's played Consult a ton, but like Hulk only a little bit, going over to play a few games on Sacred Hulk just felt like totally normal.
It's like riding a bike.
I think what's really made this work is, one of the best cards. We've had so many good cards for Hulk, like we really didn't need more, but they just keep on coming. Spellseeker, oh my god. You just keep finding things to do with that card.
Spellseeker, I think, is a great card for interfacing like multiple combos, right? Like it does a really good job of helping you layer stuff because it can serve multiple roles.
Yeah, card is gas.
You can just pile it with your lab man, get your demonic consultation in response to any draw. That is the leanest Hulk pile you're ever going to get. All right.
Good to know, good to cover. I think we can move on from that, unfortunately enough. So I think we've covered most of the hybrid console decks of note. We probably missed one or two. You can yell at the Into the North guys, specifically me. Don't assault these guys. I'll take all the hate if I missed your blue black. I'm playing Mind Over Matter and Consult and all this other stuff. Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Send your hate at me. After that, I think we are getting into single card discussion, right? So going over single card slots that you guys like, that you guys enjoy, that you guys maybe don't enjoy and want to discuss why they're bad and tell people the truth. Get into it.
I would love to. I'd love to spit some hot truths here.
So let's first of all go through some of the general card categories in the deck and sort of discuss what you guys think their places are in the deck, what you think like the cutoffs for these effects are at a certain point, all that good stuff. So let's start off with the draw spell package. So including cantrips, mass draw, card advantage in general.
So just to kind of start off, for a lot of the things that we would be kind of including in these lists, I would encourage people to check out the Kess Consultation Core list. What's included in that is just kind of what we between Redshift, Sug, and myself think are kind of like the bare minimum for running like a Kess Consult deck, because the deck is very bare bones. For what you need to run, you end up having like a good I don't know. If you just play the core list, you end up having 12 open slots to just kind of play to whatever you want to play. Like, do you want to play grindy? Do you want to play more fast? Do you want to play kind of middle of the road? Do you have your spicy cards that you want to jam in? You've got a good number of slots to kind of play with. So I think like a lot of the things that we'll be talking about, I think we should be in mostly agreement with.
But maybe we'll talk about the other slots in those. That being said, totally forgot to chill that list. These guys put together, and this was sort of the reason for getting these guys all together in a voice call to do this. But these guys put together a great Kess shell, wrote up a great Reddit post on it. I'm pretty sure they're actively maintaining it. So if you ever have questions on like what the slots look like, what are like viable cards that you guys want to maybe slot into Kess Consult, because it really is one of the most modular decks in the format. You can do whatever you want with it. You guys should check that out. We will have that in the description. We will also put the Reddit post in the description if you guys want to check it out. It is great. Highly recommend if you're at all interested in the Consult archetype, not just Kess. Go check it out. It's great. Yep. That being said, let's go on to card draw.
Yeah. So with card draw, we have like a lot of the basic, staples for like cantrips. We have like, you have Brainstorm, Ponder, Preordain, Gitaxian Probe. And then from there, it kind of gets, you kind of get into like to the lesser cantrips of, there's like Opt, there's like Serum Vision, Sleight of Hand, Serum Visions, and I think I'm not sure if I would go any further on the cantrip. I mean, there's other cantrips that you can run besides those as well. We also have Rhystic Study is a really really powerful draw card that I like. I don't think I honestly think it should be. It's like one of the best like cards in the deck because it's just like when you're just playing slow and grindy, like it's just such a house. And then of course there's Necropotence. It's not draw to put into your hand, but
it's probably worth mentioning top.
Oh yeah, since it's mine top.
Like it's not so important now. If we mentioned it before that we've got the Lab Jace because he's got his own built-in draw, but previously part of the reason we're looking like scraping so deep into the barrel with the cantrips and looking for all these other places to find incidental draw effects is just a consequence of it being a 3-card combo in the past. So I think if you've been watching the list since Jace came out, you'll notice that like we're being a bit more critical with the draw that we consider core on the list.
Yep.
So like one really sweet piece of draw that's been in and out of the different lists would be the cycling on Unearth.
Oh yeah, Unearth. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the cycling on Earth
cute.
and Reanimate, which has kind of always had that niche slot in the deck for a long time.
Yep.
Just because it gives you that sweet power with intuition, basically, where you can pile your consult, the reanimation spell, or your lab man, but it doesn't necessarily always come up. And reanimate would be like the other choice you could run there. So if there's a chance that you can hit something juicy in your opponent's graveyards. The reason that Unearth was the choice there before was purely because you're looking for that extra density of draw effects for your lab man.
Yep.
And it really is like the card that sort of stitches together just like a basic default intuition pile, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I'm still on it. It does work.
Yeah, it still works, and like even if you don't run those, you can have like a fat version using Yawgmoth's Will, but yeah, it's nice to have that combo you can assemble just with intuition.
Yeah, it's sweet. I to be honest, like I haven't gone off with it as much as I'd like with that pile, and for me, I've recently removed Unearth from mine. But that's because I'm trying to go for like a bit more with Jace being around. Like I feel like we have a bit more liberty to be to kind of focus more on like just like I don't know if I want to say good stuff, but like just better like better quality cards in general instead of like more cantrips. But that's for another discussion.
Well, we'll get onto this bit later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so definitely you guys are lower on actual like cantrip card filtering. Have you guys felt the loss of card filtering with the removal of some of them for Jace, or is it things that you're happy to take out of the deck completely and you just want to use up those slots for other things?
I haven't missed anything that I've cut in terms of draw.
Yeah, same.
I probably would say the same thing. Like for me, I think like the line that I stop at is like after Sleight of Hand. Like I'm kind of going back and forth between running Sleight of Hand and not running it because it doesn't actually draw, but it's good card filtering. Especially for those early like turn 1 plays or just like it makes my mulligans a bit better. Just kind of letting me dig a little deeper and keeping like more questionable hands. I don't know if I should just be keeping those questionable hands in the first place.
This sleight of hand will get me there.
Absolutely.
I think those cantrips are a crutch for any deck.
Yeah.
You'll learn to play without them, right? All right. I think that's we can cover. I know we're missing a big one. We'll get to it later. Don't worry about it. there's a big old 5 mana 3 black one. We'll get there in a sec. Chill. Yeah. I think we will talk about the interaction package next. I think specifically stack based interaction. We can talk about proactive hate a bit later. But what have you guys been liking stack interaction wise? Because I know the meta has definitely changed a bit since Consultation Kess was originally put together, and I think there's definitely there are differences in the preferable interaction suite, right?
Yeah, I think so. But I kind of feel like with the way that things have kind of changed, I think like about 90% of the interaction suite is like pretty like rank and file.
It's just a lot of counter spells for the most part. You've got a lot in there. It's sweet. One thing that's been super sick, for me at least, Narset Reversal. Oh my god. I'm so sold. You're
definitely sold on it?
I've been having a great time with that card, man. I tell you.
I was a bit skeptical at first of that card, but it's been amazing.
Yeah. I've definitely come around to it as well. I think the card is sweet, and in particular in our deck. I think it's been a welcome addition.
It's definitely that's happened with a lot of the recent sets, right? You guys have just been getting very like incremental little bonuses and little things here and there.
We got the talisman, we got the fiery eyelet, Jace obviously. Like, I'm not personally on Force of Negation, but that's another pretty sweet relevant card that's come up. We've had heaps of good stuff. It's been Christmas.
Yeah, it definitely has been.
So that being said, that's actually getting a bit off topic here, but those lands have been a pretty great addition to the deck, right? Just having maybe not so much that Jace is here, but I've heard from people, maybe not necessarily on dedicated consult, but they help smooth out actual Labman lines a lot.
I can say that I'm on Tainted Pact in my Breakfast Hulk list, and I've already probably won, I would say, about 5 games off a Canopy Land trigger with my Labman out. I got silenced in response to my Hulk trigger, and I just piled with a Canopy Land out, and I just piled the Cephalid Breakfast combo and Labman, and silence like protected me from my other 2 opponents. I've had just straight Tainted Pact with that jaw out. I will say, like, there've been probably a game or 2 where the opponents been like, oh, was that a Canopy Land? Like, they've missed it, which has been like their fault. But it's still sweet. There's not much you can do about it anyway. I mean, I've lost the game to another consult player that's triggered their draw off their fiery eyelet. So it works. I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's also, it also helps, like, just by taking out the worst land in the deck, because you need to be on a singleton mana base anyway, right? So it's not like you have to agonize over, do I take out a basic for this card? It's, okay, what is the worst land in the deck? We can just make a direct swap.
I've also won games with those land cards. Also, namely Cephalid Coliseum. I've done things where like I ended up like exiling, I don't know, like 80 cards from a consult looking for Jace, and then I was like, oh, I've got like almost no cards left, and then ended up keeping the getting the Jace and then using Cephalid Coliseum to draw 3, discard 3. And I was like, okay, this is pretty sweet. And then Fiery Eyelet, I can't wait to be able to win under an Abrupt Decay or something, trying to kill my my Labman or something, or bounce spell trying to bounce my Jace.
Oh yeah, I haven't had that with Fiery Eyelet, but I've had that with Cephalid Coliseum in the past, where it's like people are trying to move in response and then just use the land. People often forget those effects are there.
Yeah, I've been noticing that lately.
That's sort of okay. You know what? This falls under interaction. I'm gonna short it in here. That was also a big thing about Jace getting printed, right? Is that it specifically dodges Abrupt Decay, where that was a large weakness of the deck pre-Jace printing due to Labman just dying to abrupt decay, but now it's a lot safer.
Narset's reversal notably good for that situation too.
Also a great one.
Oh yeah.
That was another big, like, abrupt decay has been the absolute thorn in the side of this deck. I have lost so many games to my own draw.
Same.
It was because some cheeky bastards held up their abrupt decay like they should.
Yep.
And we got a 4 CMC win con that took away like an entire card from the combo and a counter for an uncounterable removal spell.
It's beautiful.
And a draw on a land.
It just everything.
Oh man.
Yep.
Thank you.
Where are you guys? Sorry, where are you guys on removal right now? What's your sort of cutoff point? What's your package look like?
So with I think with Engine getting banned, I've also just kind of, you know, we're talking with Red and Sug and just other players. I've come around to running both blasts now, both Red and Pyro, Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast. I was previously just on Pyro, but I've recently come around to running both. Because I just think there's more Jace. There's gonna be more Jace now, and you know, more blue stuff to counter.
That definitely makes sense.
Yep, blue is good and everywhere.
Have you guys felt the need for more hard creature removal or less hard creature removal recently? Maybe because of fewer commander-centric strategies you might want to be switching off soon, or maybe the opposite, or indifferent?
Honestly, Mike, you go ahead, Sean.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say, like, often, like, there's not a particular creature we're trying to remove, like, so I find I don't want to run a ton of, like, single target creature removal. I've done a few sweepers that can be nice. They are often tempo plays against, like, the sea of Thras Tymna decks, but yeah, I haven't felt the need to really want to overload on those kind of effects.
There is one thing that I think, I don't run Pognify or any of that kind of stuff lately, and that instead of kind of like, oh, do I want to play creature removal? Why don't I just play creature theft? And I you know, like, we previously haven't been on, like, or I haven't been on Gilded Drake until now, and I'm like, oh, that's a mistake. So now I'm running Gilded Drake instead of, like, well, why run, like, you know, like a bounce spell for a creature or Pognify when I could just take it and get their sweet value that they provide. So, you know, like, Gilded Drake, I think, is a great option for creature hate, or as an option. And then there's also Legacy's Allure, which I know you guys have been hawking that a lot, Sick, a ton.
Yeah, not to show my own list on the console podcast, but I think we found that Legacy's Allure has served. It serves a different role. A similar role to Gilded Drake, but it serves a definitively different role, in that, along with being sort of a value card where you can just take somebody's Tymna or take somebody's Zur is the big one. It also acts as like an onboard hate piece, technically.
Just a rattlesnake.
So like nabbing people's Hulk pieces when they try to go off, basically just stops them from doing that. It's like a preemptive hate piece against Zur, so like it can stop Zur from actually casting Zur because they don't want to have it just insta-stolen. Stuff like that. So yeah, would you guys consider Legacy's Allure possibly if we get into a point in the meta where you just want to be taking things?
I've been considering it quite a bit lately.
I need Gilded Drake first before I try Legacy.
Yeah.
I'm not on that yet.
Yeah, I feel like Gilded Drake is something
reasonable.
I should probably be running right now, but Legacy's Allure I'm a little bit more skeptical on.
Yeah, I think I would run Gilded Drake first, and, like, instead of a Legacy's Allure, I wouldn't run it over Drake. I would run it with Drake. I would want both effects, or just Drake.
That's definitely fair. Are you all migrating toward Gilded Drake being okay as a value play and is why you're running it, or are you still solidly in the you should be running Gilded Drake just to steal, like, key cards or to steal, like, things that are, like, huge impact?
So, like, I'm of a very I'm always of the mind of, like, I only want to play cards that progress my own game plan in some sort of way. And it's like, so creature removal is just like, I'm playing that to get rid of something to either like, to stop myself from losing. And so that kind of like idea just doesn't resonate well with me. And Gilded Drake is like, okay, well, not only do I remove the threat that's against me, but I'm also gaining something out of it. Like I want to take something really, really good that's gonna make me the closer to winning. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Sug and Red.
I like to point it at decks that really rely on their commander. Like if you can take a Yisan, it's not necessarily the most valuable thing for us, but it's like GG. And if you're not relying on Yisan to help you like temper the table, or he's already dropped a nice piece of stacks that you're playing through that's hurting somebody else, it's like time to steal that, boy. Like Zer's sweet because you get your Necro, obviously. That's amazing.
Or grabbing your own Remora for protection for the combo turn.
Or whatever. Like that's got to be the biggest target. I don't really point it at like value or mana. Like I probably wouldn't point it at something like a Bloom Tender in particular, or like a Priest of Titania, or even without some sort of mana sink for value. I'd rather try to take something that's like, yeah, gonna help me out, but like also wreck somebody else if possible.
So,
absolutely, yeah.
Are you guys decidedly not in the take Tymna with Gilded Drake camp?
I would if I ended up having if I had like Kess and like something else in play, but I'd probably rather steal like a Crown or something.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
things being a bit like stealing a Tymna with a Gilded Drake, it's okay, but I don't know if I'd do it most games.
Right.
That's right. You have to have a very specific board state, I'm assuming, for you to want to do that.
Yeah, like if I have a Kess out and things are just like grinding to a halt, it's pretty decent.
You've got a Kess out, and there's a Teferi player there that's just like asking for it, feeding the Tymna player draw, and there's nothing else happening, and you've got a Gilded Drake, maybe, like pretty specific, but I can see it happening.
Yeah. Makes sense. So that was a fair amount on interaction, which is great. Glad to get that. And then obviously, we general interaction with counterspell package. Not sure to go into that much.
Yeah, it's pretty like, rank and file. Just, it's a standard like all the good blue counterspells and Pyroblast and Red Elemental Blast.
Definitely makes sense. And then, sorry, we probably should. I think your guys's. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouths, but I would believe that your like lower bound for counter magic is probably delay at this point, right?
Like the bottom line of it. Yeah. Let me take a look. I think it's probably.
I like delay.
Yeah, personally. I love delay too.
I'm running delay before I'm running maybe a couple of other counters actually.
So let's rephrase that question. What are your guys' personal opinions on what's the worst counterspell in the deck?
Ooh.
I gotta look at mine here and see what.
There are some, like there's one that I'm always coming back on, which is Spell Pierce. It's been really good, but it can also just fade.
Yeah, Spell Pierce can just be dead sometimes. I still like it though.
I like it. I don't know if that's necessarily my first cut either, though, but it's one that I'm often thinking about.
I've been constantly going back and forth between Negate and Spell Pierce on my list.
Yeah.
I value delay pretty highly over Negate.
Yeah.
Those two are kind of like my line right now.
Definitely makes sense.
Just like explicitly because delay hits creatures, basically. You don't have as many that can do that. And it's really important, obviously, for like you get rogue matchup.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm assuming you would definitely have to fill in the whole of not having Pondify or Rapid Hybridization somehow, because otherwise it becomes, I'm assuming anyway, it would become very difficult to like more permanently deal with either a Gitrog or something like Urza, Zur, something like that.
yeah, we hate out the cheap dorks really well. We've got the cursed totem, but yeah, stuff 4 toughness and above that's really impactful. Yeah, Zerza, Frog are like great examples there. If you can counter those with a delay, it's great.
Makes sense. Speaking of being able to hate out other decks with stuff like Pyroclasm or Curse Totem, onboard hate, permanent based hate, proactive hate, as it were. Where are you guys currently on that front?
Oh, I'd probably take it a little further than
a little
the
too
other
far?
two. A little into the stranglehold territory. But I gotta tell you, this card just cripples games. But that's probably actually slightly past the line that most people would draw for proactive hate. You're looking at things like basically just Cursed Totem at this point, and Notion Thief, I suppose.
You also have Ristic Study. I mean, that's also a, I would consider that a hate piece.
Yeah. Sorry, from my experience, I would definitely consider Ristic Study, and I think a lot of people realize this is Ristic Study is more of a hate piece than a draw engine, right? In a lot of cases, but it's a very good hate piece.
Unless you're playing with new players, then it's a gas piece.
Yes. Frustrating when that happens. It's treat it like a sphere, people. Pay the one.
Please pay the one.
or don't when you're playing the Ristic Study. Yeah, I know. Sorry, again, I don't want to direct the conversation too much, but I was definitely wondering because I've considered it for some of the decks that I manage. But what are you guys' opinions or stances currently on the new Planeswalkers? So specifically, those would be Ashiok Dream Render and Narset Partner of Veils.
So my opinion on Ashiok is I don't think it's good enough. I could see it in like some sort of like really, really inbred meta where like everything is Hulk, and everything is like, you know, graveyard based, and like there's no creatures in play. I think Ashiok is okay, is like very okay. Narset, I'm undecided on. I've like kind of gone back and forth between like, do I play it, do I not play it? Because when I see it played in like other formats and other, or just like people jam it in like mono blue, like Urza or something like that, that card seems to be a big pain in my ass. So I'm like, maybe I should be jamming this, but I'd like to hear what your guys' opinion on it is as well.
Sure. Well, I really obviously like being able to cut my opponents off searching, but I'm also not sold on Ashiok. I mean, coming up against it on Hulk, even in Timna, it's not been that difficult to just beat it to death.
Yeah, exactly.
The random sorcery speed grave hate is really not that good. Like the grave hate that you need to interact with Hulk these days, as we mentioned before, is like random split second crap because you've got to get around Memory's Journey, and even then, like, they could just be on Abolisher and going in their own turn. Like, exiling what's just been sitting there in the graveyard for a turn cycle is probably not. Like, you might get lucky and mill like a Nomad's Encore in the top 4 of a Hulk player, but it just seems fragile, and the negative ability is not enough to make me want to run it.
Yeah, I really don't like hate that can be attacked into.
Yeah. I mean, we've got, like, Kess is a sweet blocker, but you're probably going to curve out the Ashiok first. Like, otherwise it hasn't done anything, probably. And, like, we do have Pyroclasm and Deluge and stuff, but, like, it's not enough to reliably protect it.
So you got any more input on Ashiok?
In terms of Ashiok, I really don't like it. I also think Narset's a little bit overrated. I know Narset's been like the hot stuff for a lot of people lately, but I'm really not sold on it. It's not a Notion Thief effect.
Yeah, agreed. I'm still not running it. It doesn't give me extra cards. and the fact that it can just die to beats has been like the thing that's been keeping me away from it. So
do you run it in Opus Thief, Wedge?
Yeah.
Is it good enough as a wheel payout to see play in that list?
So it's like I value it like, so the worst wheel outlet
Waste
in the deck
right?
is 100% Waste Not.
Yeah.
I value it more than Waste Not.
Okay.
And that's really, and that's the thing, like when you have like such a high density of wheels already in the deck, like Narset makes sense to me. But I guess kind of like in our deck where we're running just the 3 wheels, like Narset doesn't get us any extra cards. I mean, yeah, it strips everybody's hands, but it, mind twists everybody. So it's like, that's where I'm kind of like middling on it. Because if I don't have a wheel with it, it's a 3-mana impulse. And that has like a very temporary hate because, in a field of Tymnas and Nagilas, which is what I play against pretty frequently, like a typical table for me is like a Thras Tymna deck, a Nagila deck, and then maybe like Zur or Get Rog or something like that. Narset just would not like survive a turn cycle in my meta in particular. So it's like I've been kind of like, nah.
It's really the pods where you're not able to block for it effectively with just Kess, right?
Yeah,
pretty much.
I mean, and usually if I'm casting, like the way that my games play out nowadays is if I'm casting Kess, I'm trying to play into some sort of grind or I've run out of options. Because I try not to rely on my commander too much. So it's, I don't have her up as a blocker as much as I'd like to.
That definitely makes sense.
Speaking of good Gilded Drake targets, Kess tends to die pretty quick or eat something along those lines. So even the fact that it is a good blocker, like, rarely relevant.
Yeah,
that definitely does make sense. I think other proactive hate. We'll touch on a few. I think later on. Actually, we can do a couple now that are inside of this category because I think there are a few people, and I know a few people personally who have sort of fallen into this trap of specifically attempting to play Grafdigger's Cage against Hulk strategies. They get so deep into the I need to beat Hulk hole that
is this noobs jamming it into Zur with Rest in Peace at the expense of Yawgmoth's will?
It might be.
Oh my god, he could not be talked out of that. Sometimes you just got to learn on your own.
But yeah, so do you guys want to tell me why Grafdigger's Cage is a bad card in Kess?
Well, I mean, it kind of turns off the whole point of the commander. I mean, just a little bit.
Gets rid of us having a 1-card win con from our XL tutors.
But what if somebody Gilded Drakes your Kess? Come on, you got to stop them from casting it at their graveyard, right?
Oh man.
I mean, I'm also on JVP, and Wedge is on JVP and Snapcaster. And in the like Consultation Scepter decks in green, you could maybe do it, but it's kind of like a choice between that and Yawgmoth. I feel like I've seen people run both and just be like, sort of play around it, but I personally wouldn't want to have that sort of nombo in the list in the first place. Yawgmoth is just too good for me to give up. To hate somebody else out.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. That's there's a thing called asymmetrical hate, and that is not asymmetrical.
that is not it. This ain't it, Chief.
Yeah.
So I think that's about all the proactive hate that you guys would consider running, right? I mean, along with the obvious Curse Totem.
Pretty much Curse Totem is definitely core in the list. Like, our decks. It's just such a huge tempo piece that it's worth running. And that kind of comes into the whole onboard hate. The whole point of playing these onboard hate is it's not to just kind of lock somebody out. It's to buy ourselves enough time. It's supposed to be played as tempo. And so and like that's where like with Red, he runs Stranglehold, And I'm assuming, because from the way that he's talked about it, is like it's probably such a huge tempo piece that it's like, like especially I'm assuming your games can get kind of grindy on your end, right?
Definitely. It's kind of just like you don't want to be putting too many cards in your list that just like bank off like these really explosive fast mana hands, but you want some density of like haymakers, right? Like sort of non-committal but high impact stuff that makes people think like, do I need to blow some interaction on this, even though I know it's not technically part of the winning line. I think another good example of that would be like Cat's trying to reanimate a Jin on turn 2, being like, well shit, like we kind of got to handle this. And in the same sort of way that you can have those kind of plays in that kind of deck, like things like Mana Vault and Dark Ritual and Pedal, enable the odd turn 2 Rhystic Study, and it's massive. People just have to think, well, like, can I actually play through this? Is my deck the fastest? Like, is somebody else being hurt more by this? It puts a lot of pressure on the table. Like, its mana cost can mean that if you're bringing it down, like, it's just, you can't really tap out for it on turn 3, or it might be a little bit too late. But if you can slam it early and you're early in the turn cycle, it interacts with fetches. It's like, yeah, it can be crippling, but it does rely on a particular hand.
Well, all right then. I think we're going to do one more section on general card categories, and then we'll move on from there. But the final one would be Wraths. So Wrath of God effects or, Pyroclasm effects, things that deal with stuff on the board.
In our case.
Yeah. Where are you guys on those right now? What's the word?
So for me, I'm on Rolling Earthquake, Toxic Deluge, and Pyroclasm for Wraths. If I want to go a bit deeper, probably my next card that I would include would either be either Massacre or Yehenis, or maybe that new Flame Sweep. I kind of think that Flame Sweep card's pretty sweet.
You can live the dream of double Flame Sweep and not kill your own Kess.
Yes.
I'm on the same 3. Pyroclasm is it just does so much work against the Dorks, the Nagilas, the Timners. I'm pretty sure we've got at least 2 of them down as core, and maybe Pyroclasm's like the 3rd one, but I'm pretty sold on having all 3 at this point. And I would also be looking at probably Yehenis Expertise as my next. But I'm pretty happy with 3, to be honest, because you do get the chance fairly often to reuse them, but you do want to have like some density of them, because you don't want to be searching for them. It's really nice to natural into them, and have them be that kind of tempo play. Like sometimes you have to burn a tutor on a deluge or you just lose, but it's a lot better when you just sort of hit it along the way.
Sug?
Yeah, for myself, I've been a bit more cautious with Wraths. I don't think I've been on Pyroclasm lately, but I'd probably go back on it these days. There's always so many dork decks around that it's a good sweeper. Other than that, Rolling Earthquake, Deluge. I've never gotten to test Yehenis. I always felt like I never quite had the meta for it. Always wanted something really slow and bearish to like get the value out of that card. But I think it would also be my next choice of like 4th of the sweepers. And I'm assuming we're not counting like Cyclonic Rift and all this.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Which is another great card to have access to.
I also have to say I can maybe count on one hand the number of times I've overloaded Cyclonic Rift in my games. Like usually I'm usually dead by the time I could ever overload it. If there's been like enough hate pieces to like slow down my mana, like my mana generation or something like that. It's very few and far between. It's like most of the time it's a bounce. It's just like a 2 mana bounce spell for me.
I got to Narset's Reversal my own overloaded Cyclonic Rift a few days ago. 2 in 1 game off the 1 card, no less.
Oh, that's sweet.
I had 10 mana, so it must have been like I was paying for Rhystic Study triggers too, like 11 mana. Must have been so late in the game. Oh my god. But another great experience with Narcissus Reversal. Let's chill it again. Get yourself a Narcissus Reversal.
It's a good card.
Go pick one up. They're going fast.
Yep.
Dude, they're going way up there.
They really are.
So from the looks of it, it sounds like you guys, from the looks of looking at your sounds, it seems like you guys are a bit off of Massacre recently, which is sort of interesting to me because I think the last time I seriously looked at the deck, I think a lot of people were really considering it. Has there been a change recently, or has it just been playing with the card that has sort of made it less desirable than something like Yeheni's expertise?
You were talking about Massacre, you said?
Yes, sorry, yeah.
I've personally never played Massacre in my Kess list. I do appreciate that it's very free, but kind of along the same thing that Sug said, that like if I was in some sort of bare winter type of thing, like Massacre sounds really, really great, like a really great play.
Okay, so you're just not a fan of it in more general metas.
Yeah,
it's a bit outside of that range.
It's more. I think it's more just that there's so many wraths that I would rather run that I already have in the deck before I go into Massacre. Just because like I find Pyroclasm is pretty strong, and yeah, I mean I just prefer. I think I just prefer those three wraths. Because they're a bit easier on your ad nauseams, and they're just they're just so good at what they do already that it's like including Massacre is it's a bit on that line.
And the others sort of fill separate roles too, right? Rather than just dealing the two.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense. Red's got input on it, or was that fairly?
Yeah, Wedge kind of summarized it for me. I've never been on Massacre, so I kind of don't have much to say. Never really appealed to me as a card.
Also, it's like 4th or 5th choice for me, and I've never gone above 3. So
makes sense. Cool. Yes, I think that about does it for Wraths. I guess the thing to take away from this is 3 is about the right number. Pyroclasm is a good card. You should always be on Toxic Deluge.
Yep, that sounds good.
Cool. So now we've got through that, I think we want to take a look at some specific cards that might not neatly fit into one of these categories or might warrant a bit more discussion than just that. Specifically, I wanted to get in, first of all, because people are probably clawing at their screens, shouting at me right now, just to discuss ad nause, and not whether or not you should play ad nause, because the answer to that is yes, you should play ad nause. And if you're not playing ad nause, the question is what's wrong with you. But I think more the question about ad nause, at least for me, that I want to know about is more about how you guys tend to play ad nause, because I know there are a lot of decks out there, and this can be for Kess in general, but also just your personal play styles on it, because I know there are a few different ways that people like to abuse ad nause. There are a lot of people that just use it as a jam on your turn as early as possible and try to get ahead with it, try to win the game immediately. I know a lot more people that are also will never do that in their life and will only end step it, and only when they're already in dominant position of the game, or when they know that it's pretty safe and there's no chance of it getting countered. So I just want to know like where you guys are on that range, on that scale.
So for me, I started off in Grixis playing Storm, so I'm a bit more aggressive on my ad nauseams. Like I'll main phase an ad nauseam if I have enough like mana after resolving it to try and like attempt a win in the game. But I mean, I'll generally, ideally, you want to end of turn it, but that can be difficult. And sometimes when all shields are down, and like that's the thing, like I'll take that risk. Where it's like if all shields are down, there's looks like there's no onboard, there's no possible chance of there being a counterspell outside of like Force of Will or something. I'll definitely main phase it and see if I can concoct a a pile that wins.
Definitely makes sense. Yeah, I can never really see, like, coming from a Storm background, having, like, the playstyle of being a bit more aggressive with them.
Yeah. I mean, you also have, I mean, and the thing is, like, Sug mentioned earlier, we're not as fast as Storm, like, in that kind of ad nauseum sense. But, like, when you kind of break it down, like, we're missing, like, High Tide and, like, Snap and, like, something else or whatever. But we have, like, a majority of all the mana positive sources. So it's like you could, like, if you are doing, like, you have Chain of Vapor at your disposal, you can use and you have all the rocks that we use, and Dramatic Reversal and Yawgmoth's Will, and, like, a lot of the times when I win the game, it's usually from kind of doing from a Storm turn essentially, and that's usually what ends up, like, getting me closes out a game for me.
Definitely makes sense. Red and or Sug.
Yeah.
Both.
I'd kind of agree. I mean, you've got to balance when you think you've got an opportunity and being patient versus, like, the inevitable chip damage you're going to take as, like, the Norse Sands Green deck at the table. But it's definitely not something that you should put you off, like, the card in the first place. But you don't need to to get that many cards out of it, right? Like, you don't need that many pieces to put this all together. You just need, like, some mana, really, and your forbidden tutors. Like, one thing I like to do if I'm thinking about firing off a Norse is be like, all right, well, what exactly do I need to see? Like, what exactly, category of cards, my draw effect, my lab jace effect, or my tainted effect, do I need to see? And remember that, like, any tutor that I hit, depending on the type of tutor it is, could be a placeholder for, like, all of those cards, or, like, 2 of those cards. And, like, you will get what you need to put together a Jace effect, a consultation, and a draw, like, off less than 20 life most of the time.
Oh yeah.
Like, I would totally also, if I felt like everyone was tapped out, like, you can't be scared of Force of Wills all the time unless you've actually seen one off something like a probe or whatever. Like, fire it off. Main phase, turn 3, like, if you've got the chance to do so. But yeah, it's just not going to be as good as, like, end of the previous player's turn 3. But passing the turn with 5 mana is, like, the biggest broadcast of all time. So, like, that doesn't work as often as you'd like it to. People just hold up 2 blue and punch you with their stuff.
Definitely makes sense. Sug?
Okay, yeah, for the ad nauseum, I agree with what Red was saying there. It is really hard not to signal it if you're trying to do it end step, but at the same time, I don't think we're like a maximal greed ad nause deck. You can't, if you don't have enough mana on your main phase, it can be suicide to just try to dig for a win.
Oh, 100%.
Not that I haven't tried to do that sometimes, but I've often regretted it.
There are always the times when you just have to jam, right?
Yeah, I'll admit I've done that more than I should have.
As always. Cool. So I think that was a pretty good rundown on Nas, specifically, like, in Kess as well as you guys' personal play styles.
Yeah.
Next, sort of wanted to talk about the problem child out of the Forbidden Tutors. Mega Impulse, Plunge of Darkness. If you guys think it has place in the deck, how much you guys think it actually compares to what the Forbidden Tutors look like, or how much you guys like it, what you use it for, like, purpose-wise.
This is cool, right? I'm pretty sure we're all 100% sold on this.
It is a really good card, but it's not the same as the Forbidden Tutors, but it is a really big impulse that scales.
It's very, very flexible.
So a lot of the power would come from knowing how to use it, right? Like, knowing how much life you're paying into it at any given point in time.
Correct. So depending on your situation, like, I feel like the floor of the card is, it's a better impulse. You plunge, you can plunge for like 5 or more or less, depending on whatever you need. Sometimes, you put something on top of your deck, you need to, get that card. You can use it like that. But then like the best mode of it is when you already have like all of your like you either have both of your combo pieces, or you have only one of your combo piece and you just need the second one. You're like, all right, well, let's just go super deep, go for 30, like plunge for 35, get that Jace or that Labman or that consult that we need to complete the combo. Or if you have both pieces in your hand, you're like, okay, well, now I can just end of turn plunge for like 35 and grab my Force of Will and have counterspell backup. And like there's just like so much flexibility with that card in general that it's like, yeah, I'm happy it's in my deck.
Definitely makes sense. I'm assuming from the unanimous, yeah, it's a good card from the other two people. You guys have similar opinions.
It's worth mentioning that like we got the opportunity to be way more aggressive with this card now that we have two Labman effects as well. Like previously, it was really good, but you always had to be in the back of your mind like, oh damn, am I about to just like be forced to take my Labman if I see it in this plunge for 10. Which is why, like, I do agree with Wedge that the mode where you've kind of already got everything you need to see, or you're just looking for one last piece or one last protection, like you can comfortably dig in for like 20, 30 just to find whatever you need. But now, because you can't exile your whole deck, like you can't use it to win, I'm a lot happier to fire this one off to dig for an answer if I have to. So being able to, like, under duress, not take the Labman effect. Oh yeah, thank you. Not take the Labman effect and take the force as opposed to just losing the game or like being forced to choose to like stop someone winning at the expense of my own realistic chances of winning and feeling kind of spiteful.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense. Don't want to leave Sug out, but
oh no, I mean I've given my opinion on that card, but I mean I think it's
most just good.
I mean, if you're in a situation where all you need is one card to win, you can even like sink like 30 life into it. It's just a matter of what do you need from that card.
Yeah, it just the flexibility of it is really what gives it its power, right? And also just like the max level of just digging out for everything. Cool.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So I noticed you mentioned before, Wedge and Red, about how you guys have sort of played one of the two or both of JVP and or Snapcaster Mage, so Jace Vryn's Prodigy or Snapcaster Mage, sort of as the recursion package, secondary recursion package with Kess, and just like being able to get stuff back, recast stuff if needed. I'm assuming that means, and looking at the list right now, Sug is not on those cards. So I think this is something that's worth discussing about because that's obviously a personal preference thing, right?
Yeah. So JVP's fucking lit. That's all I'm gonna say. So it's like it fills it hits so many check marks in the deck. It's a recursion card. For when you don't have Kess, and that's a really big deal because people blow up Kess like on site. They kind of treat it like Xur. It's like if you get to untap with Kess, the chances of you winning are very high or likely. So having like another method of like playing like a 2 CMC Kess to get that extra to get that consultation flashback is sweet, and then on top of that, it's a cantrip. Like it's card filtering for early turns, and then on top of that, like you can use it to actually like draw your deck if you have a Labman, in play, and be like, all right, I'm gonna activate Jace, and do your loot. And it's just and it also has like those other kind of cute interactions where you can do the whole I'll block your Tymna and then activate and then flip. Now it's fine. Type of thing.
The invincible Tymna blocker has got me many a time, I must say.
Yeah. And then as for Snapcaster, I think I'm the only one on it at the moment, and it's okay. Honestly, I need to play more games with it. I haven't gotten in as many games with it as I'd like, but it kind of fills that whole same niche of like, this is another Kess that I can play, and it has that whole kind of that nice little thing again. I can like gotcha a Najeela or a Tymna player where they're like, oh, hey, I'm going to try and, swing at you. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to flash in the Snapcaster and then, replay. And then also like flash something back that I need, like a Vampiric Tutor or something like that. So you get some really good value, where you take the heat off, or like, you stop someone from comboing off with their Najeela. And then you also get to do, progress your own game plan. So I've been liking that. But then also there's the kind of thing of, with Snapcaster, you have the possibility of winning at instant speed with that. So, like you can actually like play Labman Pass or play, Jace Pass. But then you can just throw in, you can now like, under like a stack, kind of like what a Flash player does, is respond, all right, well, I'm going to Snapcaster and exile my library with Demonic Consultation and then like play a Brainstorm or something, or I can flash back my Brainstorm or something like that.
Definitely sounds like it has some pretty cool usage. Stug, you want to give the other side of this argument?
I think for me, it's not... I don't actually hate Jace. I think Jace is fine. It's a good utility card. For me, it's always been Flex. It's kind of gone in and out of the list. It does a lot of things decently. It doesn't do anything I particularly need most games, but I think it's a solid pick. For me, it's just like one of those Flex slots. Snapcaster, I feel a little bit more narrow. I'm not as huge fan of that. I lean pretty much on Kess and doing things on my main phase for the wins. Being able to win instant speed is cool, but I'm not totally sold on Snap.
No, I'm definitely kind of with you there on Snapcaster. It's it has a lot of like potential, but it's kind of it's on that line, and I don't have enough games in it to feel very affirmative on my opinion on whether the card should stay or go.
It's like it's got some pros and cons compared to JVP, right? Like the upside of JVP is that you're running it out on an earlier turn. So whenever it is that you're going to use it, either to replace Kess and basically give you this whole one card win con situation off a double Forbidden Shooter, or just be a draw, like you don't have to pay mana for it on the combo turn, which is nice because it's a pretty mana intensive combo. But the downside is it's a nombo with your rats and your Curse Totem. Whereas Snapcaster, you can use it to actually kill block, like the Tymnas and the Najeelas, which is a nice sort of use for it. But you can't use it. Well, you can use it on the combo turn, but it adds to the mana cost. It's still a lot cheaper than Kess, but it doesn't get hit by it doesn't care about Curse Totem basically. So for me, being able to run the JVP out along the way, have it sort of contribute towards what I'm doing even before it becomes part of the win, or even if it doesn't end up being part of the win, is worth the nombo. But the extra mana, the Snapcaster, just not quite there for me.
So another sort of synergy that I can think of with JVP is you can technically loot your entire deck away with infinite taps and untaps, right? Just by stacking them on the thing, which leads into the next thing. Segue. Which is the way that you would technically or theoretically get those infinite untaps, being Isochron Scepter plus Dramatic Reversal. Now, I know that Dramatic Reversal is a very good card in the deck anyway, because a lot of mana rocks are really good with Dramatic Reversal. But Isochron Scepter might not be a totally obvious slot in. You don't necessarily have a like simple or necessarily like maybe even consistent win off of the infinite mana. So what's the thought on that?
Yeah, that's the problem. You've identified it straight away. Without the infinite mana outlet available to us, like in the command zone, it's always going to be a 3-card combo. Like we've got the rocks to support Scepter, and Kess coming in and letting you use a piece that you use to put the Isochron Scepter combo together to get the third part kind of turns it into it's a little bit easier to maybe piece it together if you've tutored to put it together, but you still need the outlet, and now especially with Lab Jace bringing the whole consultation line down a card. It's probably just like a backup plan that you don't really need, that's kind of clunky.
Yeah, I used to be on Isochron Scepter back when there wasn't the Labman Jace. So one of the other ways of doing it was like get Isochron Scepter and then get Sensei's Dividing Top out there to draw your deck. And so like it was okay. I never really liked it, but it was okay back when there was not an alternate Jace. Not an alternate Labman rather. But now that we have like the two lab people, where I have not felt the desire for Isochron Scepter in the deck.
Yeah, pretty much my same thoughts exactly. To be honest, before pre-Jace, that was kind of like the thing where I was always jumping back and forth between playing Storm and playing Consultation, and I was always kind of like, okay, if I lose my lab man, I'm just kind of, SOL, so I have to run Isochron as a clunky backup because, again, we don't have an outlet in the command zone. But then like once Jace got printed, I was full steam ahead. Let's get on this consultation train.
So really just a former backup plan that is pretty much entirely antiquated at this point.
Okay. Correct. Yeah. The only time it's going to be good is if you have like a demonic tutor already in your graveyard and you Isochron Scepter, generate infinite mana, cast Kess, and then you replay your demonic tutor to get your outlet, and that's not as consistent as we would like. It's definitely like on that line of not good enough.
Definitely makes sense. The next one comes from a listener question, and I think we've covered this a fair amount, but just to give an actual stance on it, because I know there was some doubt originally, but just the discussion on Lab Maniac versus Jace, because I know I believe I know that there was a bit of contention early on with Jace release, where obviously it's this great thing that packages a cantrip and a lab man into a single card. It dodges abrupt decay. It does thought scour things, so you can't get Mem Journey hated for some reason. It
dodges humility.
It's not as bad on its own as Labman, right? But I think a lot of people were concerned about the triple blue cost, and I think rightly so, right? So how have you guys sort of seen that work out, or what are your opinions after the substantial amount of testing with it?
Well, like when you're doing your mana math for the combo turn, sometimes it is like if you've got the cantrip but you don't have the blue, and you go for Labman basically. Like, but the triple blue, like that has been so rarely a problem. I'm not trying to race it that quickly. Usually it's sort of a mid-range time that I'm going for the win. And you need blue so primarily like one land now? Like a colored land that doesn't make blue?
Yeah, if you look at like my land base, I think the only lands that don't generate blue that isn't a fetch land is Ancient Tomb, Badlands, and my one lone basic swamp. Everything else generates blue.
Yeah, same for mine.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been a problem.
Yeah, same in mine. Like the list is heavily blue-black and heavily blue. So like, even though it's 3 colors, it's not really 3 colors. Red is just barely there.
Just there to say hi.
Just to poke the Flash players a bit when you cast a red.
Yeah.
A red.
I guess like the versus each other though, it's kind of like, well, one's got the built-in cantrip / draw. So like if mana's not the problem, that's probably the one that you go for because it's slimmer. If you've got an extra tutor now, you're not putting a 3-card combo together, you use that to get your pack or your force. But if things are a little bit tight, or if say you're trying to put it together off intuition and you need to, if you're still on that pile, like you obviously can't unearth a planeswalker.
Yeah. And so like it's also just kind of like it's just super evident now if you look at decks nowadays that are also, as we were talking about earlier, they're all jamming a console package. And but the thing is they're usually just jamming Jace plus Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact. They're not jamming Labman because going from a 3-card combo to a 2-card combo with such an easy to do easy-ish to do mana cost is just insurmountable. Like two cards without a commander, without anything. It's just like, all right, I'm sold. That's why you're seeing it in the CST, or you're seeing it in the first sliver, all that kind of stuff.
The other thing that's worth mentioning, it's actually kind of back to the type of role that JVP and Snapcaster perform. But when you're in green, your Noxious Revival or Regrowth, which is run in those Scepter Thrasios decks, turns into another sort of Kess-esque effect that you can use to double these things together to put the whole thing together.
That's sweet.
It is sweet. I think there's maybe space, if it's not already there, for JVP definitely in that deck. Because and I don't know if the console version of PST or CST isn't on Regrowth anymore. I haven't looked, but that should stay, I think, because it fits that role.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. All right, so got Lemman versus Jace. Sounds like there's still room for both of them in the deck. Effectively, there's no reason to not run both, right?
If you're talking about specifically Kess and whatever, you run both. Yeah. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of the deck.
No reason to not do it.
Having to, yeah.
All right. Do you guys want to explain this real quick? Because I feel like you guys having a public statement on this would be nice. This next one right here.
Yeah, you go ahead, Red.
So the final card on our single card discussion is Necropotence. Because apparently some people need a bit of convincing. And that's okay, because we're going to convince you. Run it. I don't know what else to say about that one.
Yeah, you'd like cards. If yes, run
This
Necropotence.
is probably the best draw engine in Magic the Gathering. We are running Dark Ritual. It is pretty much a game plan if you see it in an opening hand on its own. Mm-hmm. Don't feel like it needs to win you like a game away. In a turn cycle. You can just bury a game in unanswerable amounts of card advantage over 2 or 3 cycles with this. It's just going to make your chances of winning so much more likely. It's not like a certainty, like a flash on the stack with a Protean Hawk in hand, but it's most of the way there.
And only for a single card, right?
Yeah.
Yes. We play Dark Confidant and other kind of card, and Rhystic Study and other kind of card advantage engines. And it's this is the ultimate card advantage engine. People who are new to the game, or people who don't play Necropotence as much, they think, oh, I resolved this turn 1. I got a Necro for 35 and just take it. Nah, no, you don't necessarily need to do that. You can Necro for 10, you can Necro for 15. You can, if you're in a grindy game, Necroing for 4 or 5, going up to 10 cards at end of turn and just exiling 3 of them, going back to hand size every turn. You're just gonna crush everyone in card advantage, and you're just gonna be able to pick and choose all the cards that you need and don't need, and you're just sculpting your hand while also maintaining that you're constantly at 7 cards while everyone else is is trying just to stay afloat with it, and it's just playing it it's not an easy card to play and use, that's for sure, but it's so powerful that you owe it to yourself to learn how to play it.
I think that's a good convincing.
Yeah.
Great. Play the card. No reason not to.
It's good.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Stop questioning us. Just play it. Cool. So that about...
Shout out to the Cabal.
That wraps up, I think, the single card discussion for the main list, for what you want to be playing just generically in the stock list. I think we're going to move on to the last part of discussing cards that go into the deck specifically, which is going to be the category of tech and meta choices, things that you might not necessarily want to play all the time, but can do work in very specific metas, very specific pod compositions. I think the first category of these that we're going to cover is Grave Hate, because if we can't run Grafdigger's Cage, then what are we supposed to do, right? And I know everybody has their own little piece of spice, little piece of tech to help deal with the Hulk menace. What historically there's been like cremate, other people have been on surgical extractions, all that good stuff. Where do you guys stand on what you're slotting in to help deal with Hulk? Or are you? Do you think that just counter magic and pyroclasms and curse totem is enough to deal with it as is?
Never enough. Extirpate 100% is the fresh hotness. Shuffle Hulk in particular, with its instant speed, wins, and built-in Memory's Journey protection, has made single shot graveyard elimination really useless. So being able to exile something at split second speed, I mean, it kind of sucks to have to make like a slot concession, but Shuffle Hulk is really good, and if you're seeing it a lot, then you probably need to make that one card concession, and I think, like Wedge said, you've got 12 to play with.
Yep, you do.
Another one that I like is actually Stifle on the Hulk trigger. Like, you can wait really late through the counter war over the flash with that, which can work out. You can also just get stung being the person that has to deal with the Hulk trigger, but people are also running the split second trick bind and throwing that down.
I've seen that sometimes.
Yeah, which again, I probably wouldn't run that if I'm teching specifically for Hulk. I'm thinking Extirpate in this list, and having played on the other side of that, like, Extirpate is a big part of the reason why I'm making sure I've got a Grand Abolisher in all my Hulk decks at this point in time. So,
Wedge, Sug, how far do you guys go on teching against grave decks?
So, you know, like I have I play against, Hulk a decent amount.
Like, it's not specific Hulk hate. I found that like too much of the actually really good graveyard hate is too much of investment in mana. Like, I don't know if I actually want Leyline of the Void in this deck. I suppose I could shove it in, but like mostly I've been leaning on blue counter Magic Dancer Hulk hate when I'm on Kess.
Yeah, I agree with Sug. I'm having like similar experiences where I just rely on those. But I mean, like, there's definitely like Extirpate. Like, I see that I've been seeing that a lot in a lot of other lists, and including in Reds. And like, yeah, it looks powerful. And then if you're going up against, like, for me, I've kind of been considering running Nihil Spellbomb, not like really to necessarily like hose Hulk decks, but also just to kind of have a general answer against a lot of graveyard decks. Because in my meta, like Zur, other Kesses, Gitrog, and obviously like some Hulk or other graveyard reliant strategies. It's kind of like a nice thing, but also lets me progress my own game plan. But on the other side of that coin, it doesn't hose the Hulk decks. They have a bunch of ways to get around that kind of stuff. So it's got some. I'm kind of on the fence on it, but it's something I've considered because again, I'm thinking about it specifically because it also helps me progress my game plan. Because in a pinch, I can draw a card from it.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge fan of Niles of Spellbomb. Like, it doesn't hit any of the Hulk decks. Like, you can't activate it under a Grand Abolisher. Shuffle's got the built-in protection. Sacred doesn't care, and it's not the cheapest draw effect either. Like, no, you can split it over 2 turns. Like, I used to have it in Zur, like, but I was pretty happy to cut it. I've never like, you can't sort of gotcha anyone with it either because you sort of throw it out there. So because it's like a sorcery, well, not necessarily, but because it's on the table, People can play around it with the incidental value that you might get out of it. I've found it to not be great, personally.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's something I've just kind of played around with and considered.
It's good for the artifact density. It's nice on the early turns because we're running it pretty close to the line. Just for things like turning on your Mox Opal in those quick hands.
Makes sense.
But it's
Bit much. All right. I think we got some pretty good answers there. I think there's definitely some range. I think it's, depending on your play style, definitely how much you're seeing the decks, what versions of the decks you're seeing will probably inform those choices a lot more than just generic, this is good, this is bad, right? Yeah. That being said, we talked about Yahennies earlier on the podcast a bit when we were talking about board wipes. I think that's probably something that warrants a bit of discussion, considering you don't necessarily see Yahennies a lot in CDH. It's not a particularly popular card choice in other strategies, other decks. So just wondering, like, where you guys would play Yahennies, like what the concept is behind it over, say, another cheap board wipe or an expensive board wipe that maybe will clear more things with more power or toughness.
I think it's just bears, right? Like, if you just find yourself swimming in a sea of hate bears and 3 creature wrath spells plus the ability to reliably recur them still isn't enough, then you might need a Yahennies Expertise. It's not amazing, but it will kill pretty much everything dead and maybe get you a value 3 CMC spell. Like, it's not great. It's pretty good, but, you know, that's pretty much when I'd be thinking, like, oh god, I need another wrath spell.
So just the ability to drop in a rock off of it, right? I'm assuming is the big one, or maybe a wheel of some sort.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you know, you can do things like, you know, wrath the board, drop Necropotence, wrath the board, drop a Bob, wrath the board. You know, it's good. It's definitely like a solid, like, you know, piece to kind of like. I like it in the fact that it actually progresses my game plan, because, you know, there's always that kind of thing with like sorcery speed or like wraths. They're you know, whether they're artifact based or creature based, is that they're generally at sorcery speed. And you know, and there's got that feel bad thing where, like, okay, I'm going to wrath the board of hate pieces, and then I don't have enough mana to win the turn, or to do something afterwards. So then I just like let someone else progress their board plan under me or try to win under me. It's like Yahennies kind of help. Well, Yahennies has that kind of little thing where, like, oh, okay, I can like try and progress my game plan a little bit, as you know, so it doesn't feel like as bad.
Definitely makes sense. I gotta keep saying that because everything that you guys are saying makes sense, probably predictably. There's been a lot of thought put into this deck, if you can't tell already. Yeah.
A lot of discussions.
Oh yeah.
A lot of discussions.
So yeah, we covered those. We covered Legacies a little bit already. Wedge, I know you specifically have been testing out Jeweled Amulet, which is sort of some low-level tech that's been popping up in Sans Green decks for a while.
Yep. So it's been okay. I've just done it in Goldfishing. I haven't actually been able to play it yet in a game. But I'm kind of just stealing from all the Urza kids that are like, you know, trying out Jeweled Amulet. And it's just kind of like a way to maximize your turn 2 plays. You know, with you know, you can do like turn 1 land Jeweled Amulet, and then, you know, with that you can do, you know, another land into like a Signet, and then actually into a Signet or Talisman, and then play like, you know, Bob or JVP right afterward. So, you know, helps you kind of like, you know, produce, you know, actually help you, you know, be in the game, you know, on turn 3 and everything like that, when things are a bit more critical, while also letting you progress your game plan with other stuff. But it's like, it's okay. It's like, so far from just Goldfishing, like I'm like, I try to do like a thing where I'd like mulligan a hand, and I just take out like the 7th card and put Jeweled Amulet in its place, and try to like do like a Goldfish hand with it. And it's all right. It's been okay, but you know, time will tell how it is in actual games. But yeah,
definitely seems worth testing. Pretty good. And then I think the last thing we're going to touch on here is maybe not necessarily tech or meta considerations, but it might be, is the concept, the topic of playing mana discounters. So not necessarily mana rocks, but mana discounters. Things like Baral, Chief of Compliance, Sapphire Medallion, some other spicy ones, maybe one that you shouldn't play. Guys got thoughts on that? Sug, you want to start this off?
Sure, yeah. I've been a big fan of Baral for a while. He's a good discount. You get that nice little looting off of counters. He's been pretty solid in all the decks I've played him in. For the other ones, I'm kind of a bit doubtful on. Maybe Wedge can sort in because he says he's tried some of the other ones, the more niche ones.
Yeah. So with Baral, I've kind of like cooled down a bit on it in consult, just because like with the spells that I've been playing, I've been like slimming my deck so much that it's like most of my spells are 1 CMC. So most of my instants and sorceries are 1 CMC. That it's getting to the point of where Baral's only discounting like, I don't know, like 17, 18 cards out of my instants and sorceries. Which is, I mean, it's still decent, but it's like been kind of, a bit middling. While like now if you look at other cards such as like Sapphire Medallion or Nightscape Familiar, where they discount all, Sapphire Medallion discounts all blue spells by 1, and Nightscape Familiar discounts all blue and red spells by 1. And then when you look at that, then like I think Sapphire Medallion comes in at about, I think around 18. Like in my current list, I think it discounts at about the same amount as Brawl, maybe like 1 or 2 more. And then Nightscape Familiar, if you count the red cards, it discounts a bit more, getting close to like the 20 mark, depending on how you play. And like there's some benefits there where you can, taking that 1 extra colorless off of Labman or Jace is pretty relevant. And because it's also applying to your other things such as your Sapphire Medallion, Nightscape, applied to your Kess. Making her cost 3 CMC. I think there's definitely some applications that you can use it for, but I definitely think you need to make sure your deck has the right density of cards to use. And then there's the last one, which is Helm of Awakening. Don't play that because you literally only play that in Storm. You only play that on a Storm turn, and even then, Storm decks in my opinion, they shouldn't be playing Helm at all because it's literally a dead card unless you're storming off. And because if you pass the turn with Helm Awakening, you just give somebody the game. So it's much better to play like these asymmetrical discounters in my opinion, if you are going to.
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I think they're pretty fringe because so much of what we're doing are these really mana efficient spells anyway that are down to like pretty much just their color considerations. And the high rock count often means we do have enough for the colorless. So for me, they've just not quite been enough. Like, but Baral would be the one that I went with for sure, and he's got 3 toughness as well, right? Like
he is a big boy.
That's relevant.
Blocks Timna,
it survives the Pyroclasm and the rats that you're playing to kill the Timna Nagila Dorks and Timna Nagilas, and blocks Timna and gives you the loot there as well, which could be the sneaky draw trigger that you respond to with your consultation if you really have to.
Right.
So that seems like the best one if you wanted to test one out. But yeah, Helm, stay away from that. Agree with that.
Not a great one. All right, I think that wraps up our single card discussion. Good job, guys. There's a lot to get through. Got through those.
We did it.
So that being said, we're gonna move on to our final real topic. We'll get into some after discussion after this, but you guys asked for it. We're gonna do it again because it's great, and a lot of you guys apparently a lot of you guys and gals, and people would like to hear about mulligans. But how you would mulligan hands, about how the professionals here would mulligan hands. So we're going to do some of that for you. We have some hands pulled up here.
Pressure's on.
We're going to go through them, and we're just gonna see what it looks like, what the mulligans in this deck looks like, what they think is good, bad in an opening hand. So to kick it off, Wedge, why don't you start off with this first one here, read off the cards, then we'll discuss it.
All right. All right, the first hand is Jace, Wield of Mysteries, Delay, a Talisman of Creativity, Gamble, Arid Mesa, Ancient Tomb, Underground River. So my initial instinct is to keep this hand. You have a turn 1 talisman, which is just great. You have a counter spell with delay. You have a kind of, this is the one where it's a little bit contentious. Like, do you turn one play a red source and do gamble for Mana Crypt? Because if that's the case,
well,
you
can gamble turn 1 off the talisman, right? So that's the question. Do you run it out? Sorry?
Oh, go ahead.
Because I thought you were saying the talisman was the turn 1 play.
So yes, you can do that, but then you could also, if you do, Ancient Tomb into Talisman of Creativity into Gamble, the chances of you discarding like Jace, Wielder Mysteries is gets much higher from the Gamble, and that's not, and then that's where there's like I can see where some people might not do that, but or you could just do the turn 1 Gamble into Mana Crypt and then into Talisman of Creativity or whatever, but
Oh yeah.
But what do you think? Would you do the Tomb Talisman Gamble?
I kind of like it because you draw a card for the turn. Your chances of beating Jace versus not beating Jace is like 1 to 5, right? Like 80% odds.
Yeah, that's fair.
I take 80% odds. Shit, yeah. Turn 1 gamble.
I like it.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's jam it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the
I keep that hand either way.
Gamble plan.
Just dump
I like
it. Get it out of here.
Yeah, but yeah, this hand's a keep. But at the end of the day, this hand's a keep. This hand's sweet. And like, if you do like dump your Jace or whatever, I mean, you're looking at like a turn, like, let me see, with just the land and that, you're looking at like a turn 3 Kess or something like that. At worst case scenario, if you don't draw any, if you just keep drawing lands or something.
Which means that you can effectively gamble again at some point, right? Or if you're
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that hand is just an example of like what a keep hand looks like, a very like solid keep hand. So we want to move on. Sug, you want to grab the next one?
Okay, the next one we have here is Volcanic Island, Gemstone Caverns, Rolling Earthquake, Grim Monolith, Brainstorm, Chain of Vapor, and Demonic Consultation. And like, I love this hand. I don't know why we wouldn't keep this hand. The only thing is that are we going first or not? Like, if we're going first, this hand gets a lot worse actually in some ways. But if we're not going first, yeah, I'm leading off with Gemstone pitching Rolling Earthquake, Volcanic Island Grim, and yeah, we're off to a strong start there.
Off to the races. Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. It's like if you're not going first, this hand's pretty nice. You get Gemstone pitching Rolling Earthquake into a turn 1 Grim Monolith. And if you are going first, this hand's it's not bad. Like if this is like your second 7, like I wouldn't fault you for keeping it. Like because at the bare minimum you have Brainstorm in your opening hand, so you're essentially looking at 11 cards instead of looking at 8 cards. On turn 1. If you were going first, and that's pretty good.
I can imagine the one concern would be not having like a real shuffle effect for the Brainstorm though, right? Like technically you can clear the top with Demonic Consultation, but
super risky.
Yeah, it can be getting Brainstorm locked.
You don't want that to be like your game plan looking at this opening hand, being like, oh, if I brick on my Brainstorm, I'll just like consult. You're planning for like a pretty worst case scenario looking at your opening 7. Like I do like it not going first, but it's not amazing.
Yeah.
Because exactly. You're relying on Brainstorm. Like your first draw really could like make this.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Red, do you want to grab the next one here?
Sure. We have a Chrome Mox, a Volcanic Island, Ancient Tomb, Preordain, Demonic Consultation, Plunge into Darkness, and an Underground Sea. So we've got Volk Island, Underground Sea, Ancient Tomb, as well as the Chrome Mox. We've got Preordain, Consult, and Plunge. So we've got no interaction, but we've got Persistent Acceleration, we've got half the combo, we've got the Cantrip and Plunge. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, I would likely keep this hand at most tables, for sure. Like it's really good mana acceleration, or something that like it's kind of like a really big thing with like the non-green decks is like you have to be a lot more careful with your mulligans, because you can't just keep a hand of land and dorks and a cup and then your other pieces. Like you have to kind of mull for some sort of acceleration most of the time, or you're gonna get blown out sometimes. And like this hand is I think this hand's sweet.
Yeah, I like this hand quite a lot. Gives you a lot of options.
I could definitely see an issue with it, though, just from my point of view of, say, if you're in a more aggressive pod, if you might not necessarily have the speed to race.
Yeah, that's fair.
It depends, though. Like, you can hold up your Plunge, and you cantrip, and maybe like if you are forced to answer a flash on turn 2, like you're not necessarily incapable of doing so with this hand either. If you like, I wouldn't even call it sandbagging the Plunge on turn 2 or 3, but like you could turn that into an answer in a clutch moment early if you had to with this hand.
Yeah, I mean, because on turn 2 you have 5 mana. You're able to plunge. You're able to plunge for interaction if necessary.
Makes sense. So just making sure that you're keeping the card draw or selection up in case you actually do need the interaction. But otherwise, yeah.
Right.
So these next few ones are supposed to be, I think, sort of what I'd consider trap hands, maybe. Things to discuss. But yeah, let's get into it. Wedge, you want to take the next one again?
All right, so the next one is Sunken Ruins, Island, Brainstorm, Notion Thief, Demonic Tutor, Dramatic Reversal, and Chain of Vapor. So, like, just kind of looking at this hand, you don't have any mana acceleration, with the exception of Dramatic Reversal, but the thing is, Dramatic Reversal does no mana acceleration because you don't have rocks in play, or you don't have any rocks. So you're, essentially with this hand, you're just kind of, if you kept it, you would just be banking on a turn 2 Demonic Tutor into like a Mana Crypt or something, or like a turn 1 Brainstorm. It's kind of when I look at this hand, I kind of see it as almost like a 5-card hand, because like literally all like I can't play Notion Thief for a while. I can't play Dramatic Reversal's dead, and so it's like when I look at this looks like I would ship this if this was like my 7 or my second 7. I think I would go to 6. I think there's better 6s than this 7.
Yeah, looking at this hand, like, what's your line? What's your game plan? A turn 1 Brainstorm, where you filter one of the cards you put back away after drawing the other one. Main phase, turn 2, tapping down for a DT. Probably getting rid of your Dramatic Reversal. It's like trash. You're not doing anything until turn 3. You're totally banking on what you see off a Brainstorm. Your gates are down. No good.
What do you think?
Yeah, it's a bit risky. I'd keep this as a second 7, though. Like, first 7, no, okay. But second 7, there's enough here that I might bank in the Brainstorm rather than going down to 6, but yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Is that your line? Do you Brainstorm turn 1 and then turn 2 main phase DT?
Yeah, I think so. I think in this one, that's what I'd be doing.
Depending on draws, obviously. But.
Yeah, I mean, like worst case scenario, you get a turn 3. Like literally worst case scenario with this hand is you get a turn 3 Notion Thief. That's not. I mean, that's not like if you're playing at a table where somebody's going to get like a turn 2, or like a turn 2 like Timna or something like that. Like you can really kind of put a wrench in their plans, or you can play it in response to someone else's cantrip or something. Go, on turn 3, on turn 3 going forward. So,
Yeah, looking at this hand, like, what's your line? What's your game plan? A turn 1 Brainstorm, where you filter one of the cards you put back away after drawing the other one. Main phase, turn 2, tapping down for a DT. Probably getting rid of your Dramatic Reversal. It's like
I mean, it's not the worst, but yeah.
The pieces ending up in the bin along the way with the brainstorm and the DT are like kind of nice, but you still not like from this. You've got no way to actually stick a Kess either. Like you're still gonna need to find like a red source and just more mana, which you probably find off the DT.
Right.
So you need to like, and you definitely don't want to be tutoring like some kind of red artifact source. Like you want to be getting your mana positive Cheerios, like your crypt or something. So yeah.
And then finally, Sug, you want to grab this last one?
Okay. Oh man, I feel like this is one of these horrible things where you shouldn't keep this hand, but I might, because that Narset's is so goddamn tempting. Just like turn one soul ring, turn two. Somebody's gonna tutor that turn cycle, and like but then if just nobody tutors, it's gonna like be an ass hand. This is such a swingy hand.
So for context, this hand contains Soul Ring, Snow Covered Island, Fiery Islet, Underground Sea, Mental Misstep, Narset's Reversal, and Toxic Deluge.
So I would keep this hand in like exactly like versus like Blood Pod, and like if I was playing against like a bunch of like fringy decks where like, oh, I'm gonna run stacks pieces and I'm gonna run like like and like, or like they're just planning on going really slow, and they're all creature based decks or something, I would consider it. But it's like the fact there's no gas or anything like that is it's an interesting hand.
You're pretty much banking on stealing something with the reversal.
Yep.
And that does work. And you are really likely to see those sorcery speed like tutors out of the black decks in the first couple of turns. You never know. You might even bag yourself somebody else's ad nauseam with it. That feels good, I can tell you. Right. And if it's like, to be honest, if you do find yourself falling a bit behind in tempo to the green decks, like Deluge is there, it comes online like turn 2 off the Soul Ring. So it's like a bit dependent on pod composition as to whether or not you're gonna get, like, you're likely to get value out of Narsets, which is a pretty unreliable gamble, but that depends on how you're feeling. And Deluge could be like a pretty sweet card in the right pod with a Soul Ring to throw it down quick on tempo. And you are casting Kess off this hand.
Yeah, it's true.
It's okay.
Is there any consideration to cracking the Fiery Islet early? Maybe to dig if you can't necessarily nab anything with the Narset's Reversal?
I'd be jamming Kess before I even thought of that, for sure.
Yeah, I don't think I would jam. I don't think I would use Fiery Islet to draw a card right away on this unless I was just like so out of it, that I like really like. It would be like a lot. I would be pretty desperate if I used it for that draw.
Yeah, Fiery is pretty desperate if you're doing it early.
All right. Well, I think we got through a good spread of hands there. Couple of good ones.
Yeah.
Few iffy ones. Couple brave ones. Yeah. So that wraps up our main topics. We're going to move on right now to a general floor topic, just for piloting advice, for general tips and tricks you'd like to throw out there for aspiring console pilots, people looking to take their game up to the next level in the deck. Any type of things like that we might have missed earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, I think like probably my big advice is like goldfish a lot. So, with the whole consultation core list, you have all these open slots as we talked about earlier. So there's a lot of room for kind of, tuning things to your meta, tuning things to your playstyle, to your preference, to, whatever you want. And, when you're looking on trying out a card, or you want to try, see how a card kind of plays out One thing to do is do like the little goldfish trick where it's like, all right, I want to see how this card performs. Put it in your opening 7 when you goldfish. Like do the 6 random cards, add this one. See how it plays out in your early turns. What is this doing for you? And just play a lot. You're going to get so much more. Like this isn't a storm deck, so you are going to get a lot more mileage out of just playing like raw actual games rather than goldfishing. Like goldfishing will help you, get you aware of like what are your, like how soon can you go off, or how soon can you threaten to go off, or how can you like establish your board. But like, playing real games is going to be like the best piece of advice. Just play. I think that's probably like my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, just going off of what Wedge was saying there, like with this deck, the combo itself is fairly simple. You want to get the idea of the general flow of the deck through goldfishing, and also how to answer specific opponents as you go along. And that is something that just playing will teach you a lot better than theory crafting.
And I suppose you need to consider those sort of 12 flexible slots that the core list leaves you with, not like completely as this sort of space for your personal expression. Like you need to be tuning for your meta with those slots. We've got like a lot of options there, and you can hit us up if you're not sure, but this deck really can let you attack like the regulars to your tables with those flex slots. So like,
yep,
take some data. Like if you're playing online, you're probably playing at similar times during the week. You'll start to see similar people. If you're going into stores, it's the same deal. Like be a bit conscious about what you're seeing, and then be critical with your flex slots.
Yep. If you need to run more wraths, run more wraths. If you need to, play more interaction, there's plenty of extra counter spells that aren't even in the core list. There's spell pierce, there's the other there's mana leak, there's negate, there's a ton of spells that that you can kind of really mold to your meta and to like what you're looking at.
Great. Well, I think that covers a lot of the stuff that people might need getting into it. A lot of good concepts there to follow. You guys want. That being said, I think we're about getting time to wrap it up. If anybody listening to this wants to find out more about Consult beyond what was just mentioned in this podcast, I'm sure you guys can contact any one of these guys on Discord or Reddit. We will link all of that stuff in the description below. They can find you guys on the Grixis and Mean Girls Discord, I'm assuming. Yep. All of you guys. Do that. Again, we will link the Consult Cast shell and the Reddit post if you guys want to check those out as well. And that about does it for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us, the podcast, with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at IntoTheNorthPod, via our email at IntoTheNorthPodcast@gmail.com, or on a Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. An extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work toward improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a patron, we are at patreon.com/IntoTheNorthPodcast. Thank you, as always, to the band of Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our long-suffering editor, Roadkill. Thank you to all 3 of the people on this podcast again, Redshift, Wedge, Sugandaraja, all the above, for being on this podcast. It was great to have each of you guys. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see ya.
Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, see you later.